Our reporting begins with President Trump's former attorney and fixer, Michael Cohen, admitting he lied to Congress about contacts he had with the Kremlin about building a Trump Tower in Moscow, and that he intentionally misled the lawmakers about how much President Trump was involved. Michael Cohen pleaded guilty this morning at federal court in Manhattan. The plea was part of a deal with the special counsel Robert Mueller in exchange for Cohen's cooperation in the Russia investigation. According to new records, court records, Cohen now admits that he was in talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin's right-hand man and spokesman to get the Moscow Trump Tower project approved, and even got an invitation to St. Petersburg. This was all going on while then candidate Donald Trump was running for president, as the Kremlin interfered with our democracy, as Russian hackers stole emails from the DNC and Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman. Michael Cohen previously told Congress under oath that the Moscow project was terminated in January of 2016, just before the Iowa caucuses formally started the presidential race. Michael Cohen now admits that was a lie, and that discussions about the project were still going on as late as June of that year, and that he not only did agree to travel to Moscow, he says he asked the president about going as well. Those trips never happened, and President Trump claims Michael Cohen is making up a story to get a lighter prison sentence.
He's a weak person, and what he's trying to do is get a reduced sentence. So he's lying about a project that everybody knew about. I mean, we were very open with it. When I run for president, that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to do business. I was doing a lot of different things when I was running. After I won, obviously, I don't do business. From January 20th, we had a position to possibly do a deal to build a building of some kind in Moscow. I decided not to do it. The primary reason, there could have been other reasons, but the primary reason, it was very simple. I was focused on running for president. There would be nothing wrong if I did do it. I was running my business while I was campaigning.
So the president says Michael Cohen was lying to the special prosecutor in an attempt to get a reduced sentence. If you lie to a special prosecutor, your sentence is not reduced. It adds on to the lies you already told. Just days before President Trump took office, he sent a tweet denying any links to Russia. Quoting here, "Russia has never tried to use leverage over me. I have nothing to do with Russia. No deals, no loans, no nothing." The vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Democrat from Virginia, Mark Warner, says Michael Cohen's confession is just one example of why the Mueller investigation has to be allowed to continue unimpeded.
This is one more example of one of the president's closest allies lying about their ties to Russia and Russians. And again, at least first blush looking, it's just remarkable that you had the president's personal lawyer still dealing on a Trump Tower project through the whole campaign, and it appears even into 2017.
Michael Cohen's guilty plea comes just days after the president provided written answers to some of the special counsel questions. Whether those answers match the sworn testimony from Cohen, we do not yet know. The chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge reporting live from Washington.
Well, Shep, a draft statement prepared by Cohen's lawyers for Congress is at the heart of Cohen's guilty plea today, lying to congressional investigators about this 2016 Moscow real estate proposal. Now, based on the new timeline provided by Cohen, the negotiations with Moscow continued well into the presidential campaign and during the same month of the controversial June 2016 Trump Tower meeting. Cohen told Congress in the written statement, quote, "The proposal was under consideration at the Trump Organization from September 2015 until the end of January 2016. But he told the court this morning, as you noted, that it lasted another 5 months. Cohen also told Congress, quote, "I never considered asking Mr. Trump to travel to Russia in connection with this proposal. To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Trump was never in contact with anyone about this proposal other than me on 2 occasions." But Cohen told the court today the discussions were far more extensive. What we don't know right now is the extent of Cohen's cooperation and whether it extends beyond the Moscow real estate project. The reports suggest, in fact, it may, Shep.
And Fox News has obtained an email between Michael Cohen and a Russian-American business developer very close to Vladimir Putin.
That's right. These emails are from Felix Sater. He's a business developer with strong ties to Putin, who told the Senate Intelligence Committee last year that he was like the intermediary, the kind of go-to guy for the Moscow real estate project. At the very least, Sater is a colorful character. He's a Russian-born real estate developer turned U.S. citizen and described in some media reporting as a guy who plays real close to the edge. Also an alleged FBI informant who has boasted about his ties to the Russian president. And in this 2015 email to Cohen, Sater writes, "Buddy, our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it. I will get all of Putin's team to buy in on this. I will manage this process. There is no one on this planet that wants Donald elected more than I do." As you know, the Moscow real estate deal fell through and the president and Cohen did not go to Moscow. But the emails certainly seem interesting, to say the least, Shep.
Catherine Herridge reporting live from Washington. Let's turn to Jeffrey Cramer now, former federal prosecutor, assistant U.S. attorney, now the managing director at Berkeley Research Group, which is a global consulting firm. Good to see you again.
Good afternoon.
The lying has been well documented. The lying was not in question before today or last week or last month. The lying is something that has happened repeatedly by members of President Trump's inner circle regarding contacts with Russia. But does this particular admission of a lie give us any insight into why the lies might be happening?
You know, I think it does, and we have to just step back for a moment. It does give some context as to why different people might be lying. Specifically, there's some sort of business relationship contemplated, not gone through, but contemplated during the election. The problem is with answering that question is we only know one more piece of the puzzle today. But I think it's safe to say that today's plea by Mr. Cohen is clearly the first time that we've gotten that connection between Russian business interests and the Trump organization. So I think it's a consequential day, let's put it that way.
So the lying, it would now appear, is at least in part about money.
Correct. Before, we've been talking about WikiLeaks, as you indicated before, Mr. Stone and Mr. Corsi. That's one thread. Now we're getting into the finances, which has always been, frankly, the more interesting and fruitful area that Mr. Mueller could be pursuing, because it's going to get to the president's tax returns, one would assume. And once you start getting into the finances, as you deal with any sort of conspiracy or fraud or anything in the white-collar area, it always comes down to money, or 9 out of 10 times, and this is probably no exception.
The money laundering has always been in the ether here as this investigation goes on. There are a lot of different examples. For instance, back in 2004, when the president bought the house for, what was it, $45 million, and then sold it to a Russian oligarch for $90 million, and there were a lot of instances of possible crossover there. This avenue of money laundering is, especially given the Deutsche Bank incidents today overseas, is that coming together as well?
We certainly see a little more light into it, but you're right. Money laundering is always a thread that gets pulled, because when you're looking at any area where money could play a factor, there's always going to be money laundering, because you have to get the money out. There's no sense doing any scam or fraud or whatever it might be if you can't get the money out. And we saw that materialize with Mr. Manafort and the machinations that he and Mr. Gates went through. And you're right, Donald Trump had some of these interactions as a private developer, not really shocking. I think you'd see that in a lot of large real estate transactions. But as we transition now into him being president of the United States, it certainly takes a heightened interest. When you throw in the Russians, it throws it even more into the spotlight, and I think is going to connect to that Trump Tower meeting. All these things, there's a thread that goes through all of this, and I think today was an important part.
You said that, and you have said repeatedly, that what Mueller is doing is sending out cards, warnings to people. If you lie to us, you'll be indicted for lying to us. Are there others within the Trump family even who might have reason for concern regarding this matter at hand?
I think if an objective observer was to look at this, you'd have to say yes. We know from Mr. Cohen's allocution and what he said today that there were others in the Trump organization that knew about the time period of when these conversations were going on and were aware that a trip to Russia was discussed with then candidate Donald Trump. So if you're one of those people in Trump organization who has talked to either Mr. Mueller or congressional hearing, and you towed the line, in other words, you said the same lies that Mr. Cohen did, I think you're having a nervous night tonight.
Are you referring to Donald Trump Jr. or others?
I think Donald Trump Jr. is certainly one. That's a logical inference given what we know to date and Mr. Cohen's allocution. Those questions would certainly have been asked of Donald Jr. They may have been asked, as you indicated before, on the written questions submitted to the president. They may have been asked, and probably were, of others in the Trump organization. And anyone who said that it was January is when it stopped and that there was no trip planned to Russia, they're looking at an indictment square in the face right now.
One more thing. The president said that Michael Cohen is weak and that he's lying. What would your experience be about a defendant in this position lying on this matter?
You know, I saw that. It's hard to wrap your head around. You got to put weak to the side. That doesn't mean anything. In my experience as a prosecutor in New York and then here in Chicago for a dozen or so years, defendants lie. They lie regularly. That's really not a big thing. Nobody lies about lying. You know, that's a hard one to wrap your head around.
You've never seen
because
that?
If you were, I've never seen that. I doubt many prosecutors have. If you're lying about lying to cut a deal, that makes no sense. If you're telling the truth in the first instance, then you've got no jeopardy. But it's an odd one to lie about lying, the result of which then could send you to prison. That's just illogical.
So excuse number one for what happened today is illogical and something you've never seen.
I think that's a fair statement.
Jeff Cramer, live with us from Chicago. Jeffrey, thank you.
Certainly.
Ahead, much more on Michael Cohen's guilty plea